Perfect.
See you on the YouTube side. And I will just start the cloud recording. There you go.
Thank you.
Do you want to allow people in, or do you want me to admit everyone?
Oh, I can admit them all. I didn't realize I need to let them in. Hey, look, you're on there, Dave.
I know,
Maybe you were just in like the weight room or something.
I bet that was it.
That's all right. We like to have visitors over here. So.
All right, David, you ready?
Ready.
All right, let's see. Mr. Kennedy, I see you.
Let me unmute here. I'm here.
Okay, Mr. Hinckley, I see you're here. Good.
There we go.
Very good. Good to see you. Ms. Hanning, I don't
Maura
see.
emailed us and said she may be a few minutes late.
Okay. Okay. Well, maybe we can maybe we'll just get started here then. Being that it's 4:03, August 11th, I'll call this meeting to order, the regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Will the secretary call the roll? Joseph?
Oh, Mr. Hinckley,
Here.
Mr. Kennedy,
Here.
Mr. Spiegelberg,
Here.
Ms. Hanning, and Chairman Moore.
Here. And as Joe had told us that Ms. Hanning will be joining us maybe a little late. I'm not sure if we should, at this point, excuse her as being absent. David, what do you think on that?
We could just hold off on that. I think excusing her at this point.
Okay. So we'll come back to item 2. We'll move on to item number 3, which is approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda for the August 11th, 2021 meeting?
Mr. Chairman, I'd hold off till David, because every time I've moved the last 2 months, why he's had a change. So I'm going to wait to hear from David that there's no change needed.
And Mr. Chairman, we do have a change.
Okay, good.
Very good, Dave. What is
Yeah,
that?
so we need to remove item 5, Ladybug subdivision application. The applicant came in and visited with us yesterday, and they want to rearrange lots. Actually want to go from 3 lots to 2 lots. And so this one's not ready to go, and we'll pull that from this agenda.
Okay, very good. So delete item number 5, your public applications, Ladybug Ridge subdivision. Are there any other changes to the agenda for today's meeting?
Mr. Chair, no other changes, at least from my perspective. I did want to let you know that Joe's going to bail on us. He wants to go fly somewhere, so he's got a flight he's got to catch, and so he'll be leaving about 4:45.
Oh, okay. Well, very good. We'll have a good trip. I thought you were meaning he was bailing on us leaving the planning office.
No, not yet. So
Okay. Well, good. We'll keep him there for a while. Okay, that sounds just fine. With that being said, do we have a motion to accept the amended agenda for the August 11th, 2021 meeting?
Mr. Chairman, Keith Kennedy, so moved.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Do we have a second?
I would so second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Spiegelberg. I'll go ahead and take a roll here. Mr. Kennedy,
Aye.
Mr. Hinckley.
Right.
That didn't come across very good.
Aye.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Spiegelberg,
Aye.
and of course, Ms. Hanning will join us here shortly, so we'll skip her on that. And myself, Chairman Moore, aye. So the agenda for today's meeting has been changed. And if everybody's taking note of that. Approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes for the July 14th, 2021 meeting?
Mr. Chairman, this is Kennedy. There is, and the 8th paragraph of item B should read findings of fact, not findings of face. And other than that, I found no errors, and I'll move with the correction subject to anybody else finding any error that found any errors in the minutes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Hinckley? Okay,
So it looks fine to me. I'd be happy to second Keith's motion.
okay, thank you, sir. So we have- yes,
Could we add the special meeting as well? We had the regular and special meeting minutes that were provided. I don't know if it made it onto the agenda, so
I moved to so amend to include the minutes from the special meeting.
thank you.
okay, very good. Do we have, so do we need a second on that again, Mr. Hinckley?
Oh, yeah, I accept that change in the motion that I seconded.
Okay, thank you guys very much. We'll go ahead and call roll on this. Mr. Kennedy,
Aye.
Mr. Hinckley,
Aye.
Mr. Spiegelberg,
Aye.
Chairman Moore, myself, aye. And again, Ms. Hanning at this time isn't present. So motion carries. Disclosures. The chair calls for any disclosures to be known. Do we have any disclosures from any of the commission members today?
None for me, Kennedy.
Okay, Mr. Spiegelberg,
None.
none, Mr. Hinckley? Mr. Hinckley, none from you?
Oh, none.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I need to speak up a little better. Sorry.
No, you're fine. I do have one disclosure for today's meeting for everybody to know. Today is our civil attorney, Jennifer Curran's birthday. So just so everybody knows, and you're welcome, Jennifer, for letting everybody know. Other than that, we'll get moving forward. The discussion today will be conducted in accordance with the state statutes, the rules of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and other applicable laws. I would ask any individual who addresses the commission to state their name and address so that we can put that in our minutes and have that as public record. With that being said, we'll move into public applications. The public application that we're going to go through here is going to be, and I'm going to butcher this, Krygensa, second edition subdivision application SD-07-21. David?
All right, it's actually me, and Dave Hammond is here with us if you have any questions for him. The applicant is and owner are Stephen and Nancy Stutzman, located in the southeast quarter of Section 10, Township 15 North, Range 73 West. The request is to approve a preliminary plat. Current zoning is rural residential. Current use is residential. Access will be from Evetts Lane, an existing private road. The original access point will be from Soldier Springs Road, and they do have an access permit. Reviews, there were quite a few. Albany County Fire, Luke Hawkins has no concerns, but recommends the Hall Water Program. Karen Bowman, GIS mapping specialist, wanted formal legal added to the plat, which they have taken care of, and had some questions about the ownership signature spot, which has also been taken care of. Clerk's office, Gina Munari, real estate supervisor, had questions regarding signature lines, and that will be taken care of on the final plat. Albany County Engineer Jake Schneider had some questions regarding the preliminary plat, drainage report, and road plans. The full comments can be seen in the comments section. Some comments were addressed and some comments the applicant asked for a variance on. The road plans technically don't need to be submitted until the final plat application, but they were turned in and comments were submitted on them. Also, I missed a variance request, and Jake called me yesterday to point that out and had something to say about that. If he wants to speak up now, that would be great.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, thank you, David. Chair and commission members, thank you. I would say that one item here we have is the drainage that I requested and that our subdivision regulations would require, and I'll turn my video on here for you, sorry, that we are required to have provided to us the extents of any inundation areas. And that was not provided on the preliminary plat. And James Johnson, who's on the call here, he has dropped a set of updated plans by my office yesterday. And it does have a couple of notes on there about drainage easement, and I think that the intent there is that the drainage easements will be provided on the plans, but it was not exactly indicated as being as such in the responses that James provided to me. So as we move forward, I would suggest that one of the recommendations or the requirements of approval be that drainage, either easement or some inundation area, would be provided on the preliminary and final plat, or the final plat, just as a public disclosure for people to understand that there is a risk. I mean, not that they won't build there anyways, and not that they won't do something within that, but it provides a public disclosure that there is a risk there, because within the FEMA firm, there's no area of inundation that is noted. And so as, due diligence effort is being sort of a, engineering capacity, we need to be able to provide that level of disclosure to folks. So that's kind of all I had to say. Thank you.
All right, I'll continue. Albany County Road and Bridge, Rob Fisher had no concerns. YDOT, Ryan Shields has no concerns, and Wyoming Game and Fish, Amanda Loesch has no concerns. This is in priority growth area 3. Water will be provided from individual wells. Septic will be provided from individual systems, and small wastewater treatment facilities will need to be applied for through the Albany County Planning Office. A storm drainage report was complete for this proposal and reviewed by Jake Schneider, county engineer. Rocky Mountain Power provides power to the area. Postal Service is existing in the area. There are 3 new roads proposed, Evetts Court, Patrick Street, and Patrick Court. And an extension of Evetts Lane is proposed. The applicant will need to draft a covenants with a road maintenance plan at the time of the final plat. Financial assurance will be needed at the time of the final plat, and fire protection will be provided by Albany County. Notice has been provided in accordance with Albany County Planning and Subdivision Regulations. Chapter 4, Section 9, variances. The complete list of these is in the comments section under the county engineer's comments. The applicant is requesting a variance from the Albany County Subdivision Regulations on drainage ditch slope, which requires a 0.5% slope. The applicant proposes a 0.4% slope for this project. Jake Schneider, county engineer, advises approval of the variance request. The applicant is requesting another variance from the street standards. The applicant proposes 20-foot wide roads with 2-foot shoulders, and Jake Schneider advises the variance is not granted for this request, and at a minimum, the road should be 24 feet wide with 3-foot shoulders. The applicant is requesting a variance from the street standards again. Our regulations call for a 50-foot minimum center line radius on 90-degree intersections. And the applicant proposes a 20-foot radius curve on the inside of a 90-degree intersection. And Jake Schneider advises that the variance is granted. The applicant is requesting a variance from the Albany County Subdivision Regulations on street standards. The regulations call for vertical curves to be used at changes of grade exceeding 1% and shall be designed to provide at a minimum a sight distance of 200 feet. A variance is requested due to mentioning that the first time a grader is run down the road, vertical curve will be lost. As for the 200-foot sight distance, a variance is requested because lowering the elevation of the road would cause a depression, allowing large amounts of snow to fill in, and raising the elevation would require large amounts of material to fill in, and the applicant is worried about the cost. Jake Schneider advises that the variance is granted. The applicant is requesting a variance on street standards. Our regulations call for a maximum slope of 5:1 for ditches. A variance has been requested to have a greater slope on the back slope of the ditch due to current conditions of the property. Jake Schneider advises that the variance is granted. And the applicant is requesting a variance from the Albany County Subdivision Regulations on street standards. Our regulations require a road to be built at least 1 foot above existing grade. A variance is being requested to lower the required height of the road to 8 inches above existing grade. Jake Snyder says that lowering the height of the road tends to allow for more drifting, but the owners will have to deal with drifting whether it's 8 inches or 12 inches. He's advising the Planning and Zoning Commission to consider if additional drifting could be a life/safety issue and base the variance decision on the findings of that discussion. Findings of fact. The summary of subdivision requirements listed in the staff report shall be incorporated as findings of fact. Conclusions of law. The applicant is proceeding in accordance with the requirements of the Albany County Platting and Subdivision Regulations. And this subdivision is being proposed in an area that has been previously developed into a residential community. The preliminary plat complies with the standards of Albany County Platting and Subdivision Regulations. This property is zoned rural residential. This property is in priority growth area 3. The lots will be accessed from Evetts Road by way of Soldier Springs Road. Financial assurance, covenants, and the road plans will need to be finalized with the final plat application. The staff recommends approval of the preliminary plat for Cregenza 2nd Edition Subdivision Preliminary Plat Application SD 0721, based upon and incorporating the findings of fact and conclusions of law as stated in the staff report, with acceptance of the variances proposed.
Thank you, Joe. Do we have any questions from the commission for Joe? Mr. Kennedy?
I do have one for Jake, and just because of the limitations of what screens I have, Jake, could you tell me the direction of, or is it all of the roads within that they're requesting the variance on the height, or is it only a specific one? I couldn't tell that from the plat map.
Right, yeah. Yes, Member Kennedy, can you hear me? If I read the plans correctly that James has submitted to me yesterday, he actually, that variance would kind of be null and void at this point because the plans that he submitted to me were updated, providing a 24-foot roadway width.
And I guess it was more to that last one on the life safety on the elevation on the 8-inch variance rather than the 12-inch height was more.
Oh, the height. Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. Yes,
that's all right.
So the subdivision, yeah, the subdivision regulations we have require a 12-foot minimum, and it the reason is to prevent drifting of snow. But if you've lived here through one winter, we all know that the snow drifts. We'd have to raise it 10 feet high for it to not drift bad. And so I don't know what the maintenance protocol is for that road. We all live here out there north of or south of town, they're going to have, county, or it's not even a county road, but local maintenance on that road. And so my concern, my comment is that with an 8-inch road, it's lower than our subdivision regulations, but it's still higher than the existing terrain. It doesn't exactly meet the subdivision standards, but it's hard to quantify exactly how much more a 4-inch difference in road height is going to make or not make drifting occur, if that makes sense. And I assume if you live out of town and on an access road to a property, you're probably going to have some experience with snow drifting and problems in the winter. And so my comment is that I don't have a problem with the 8-inch lift versus a 12-inch lift, because it still provides height above the existing ground. It's just a matter of if that additional 4 inches is in the Planning and Zoning Commission's eyes is going to present an undue burden or an undue risk on the people that live out there. Thank you.
Thanks, Jake.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Mr. Hammond would like to speak.
Honorable Chair and members of the commission, Dave Hammond, 510 East Kearney Street, Laramie, Wyoming, the surveyor on this project. Actually, this area is in the road improvement district out there that's been developed. So all these lots, once they are sold, they're already being charged for for some of that district work out there, the improvement district, the maintenance on those roads. And as each lot is sold, then the landowner would then be charged through the county for their taxes on that road maintenance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond. Mr. Kendi, is that the only question you had?
That was the only question I had.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hinckley, I see your hand was up. Go ahead if you have any questions for David or Joe, excuse me.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a couple just for my own education. The recommendation was to subscribe to the Hall Water program, and we saw that on Ladybug. I know that's been put aside, but I think the same comment came here. What does that mean?
Okay, so the Albany County Water District, or the Albany County Fire District, number 1, they have created a hauled water program. So in the past, the regulation was to just put in a big cistern, like a 12,000 gallon cistern or whatever it was. They would have to put that in as part of their subdivision. What becomes problematic is once those are put in, the homeowners association is supposed to maintain those. And there's really no oversight or a way to maintain those unless somebody enforces that, which is kind of out of the planning office's purview, more in the district's purview, but they don't have the time or the volunteers or whatever to do that as well. And in addition, there's a lot that a lot of the those that they don't even know where some of them are that have been planted in the ground. So as an alternative, we still have that as a requirement unless the fire district is okay with an alternative. The alternative for the fire district was to come up with a per lot fee that an applicant would pay into, and that money would go into their hauled water program, and that would go to buying more tankers or pumpers. They've got different names for all their vehicles, more of those vehicles to better serve the area. And they thought that would be a much better way than planting the cistern. The cistern might be appropriate for other areas, maybe up in the mountains or way up north or something like that. But this just seems to be a better route for them. And this was a regulation that came about, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, after doing a lot of discussions with the city fire guys and the fire district and the fire warden. And this just seemed to be a good compromise. And this program has seemed to work well. It's easy for the subdividers. They just, they pay their fee, and it goes into that, and then they can use that for fire suppression in the future. So that's kind of where that came from.
So that is what will happen here. It was written as sort of you ought to think about this. I mean, is that then going to be part of this subdivision?
Right. So yes, that's what's being recommended. Fire suppression needs to be taken care of at the final plat level. So we will require documentation that the fire district and the applicant are working together on that, or we usually get a letter or an email or something saying, yeah, they paid into this. They're good to go. So.
Okay, thank you. Now, Joe, I didn't see just the basic, what's the lot, how many lots and what's the lot size? Remind us of that.
There's 10 lots, and I think it averages about 7.
Over 7, there's one larger one at 10.
Yeah, so a little over 7 acres.
The DEQ review comes on the final. What's the story on that?
Final plat.
Okay, so then this will come back to us for final plat, at which point we'll see the DEQ review.
Yes.
Okay. Then there were some comments about the street names that I think came from somebody in the comment letters. That it was also mentioned in that thing this morning from the city, which is
So our addressing coordinator, Jory, had a comment saying that the road names needed to be changed up, which they did. It should be, you should see that in your packet.
So those changes were made.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then the big question was just, are these variances? I got lost on that. And when I read the staff report, it makes this statement: the preliminary plat complies with the standards of the Albany County Platting and Subdivision Regulations. Reading through this, that's not correct. It does not meet the standards. Am I missing something? And then the staff recommendation is to go ahead and approve it without any of the variances. So I'm confused by the staff report in terms of what it is that you're telling us you'd like us to do, and whether it meets the standards or not. So my understanding from Mr. Schneider that it does not meet the standards. That's why it needs variances. What am I missing?
The staff recommendation says to approve it with acceptance of variances.
Okay, so you are overruling Jake on the variances that he suggested we not approve. Is that correct? I mean, you have variances and it says that our engineer recommended not granting them.
And we probably need to get some clarification from Jake. The one that he said not to approve was the 20-foot road base with the 2-foot slopes or whatever. And so what Jake had said earlier was that has been taken care of. So there probably was some wording issues in the report. It should have been a little bit clearer. But yeah, let's make sure, Jake, is everything being taken care of what you want to have taken care of here? Because yeah, if there's variances, we need to say specifically which ones are not being approved, I guess. If the way that the recommendation is written is we just approve all the variances. So you're correct in that manner. So we probably need to make sure that that's the case. So I'll let you take that, Jake.
Yeah, thanks, David. So the one request that I was saying that we should not approve or allow was the 20-foot width. And James had given me an updated set of plans yesterday afternoon. And in those plans, it provided a 24-foot width. So I don't know if the comment is any longer valid, but I would say that we would approve the subdivision with the requirement of a 24-foot roadway width.
And then we would probably want to include in that motion too, to make sure that the drainage easement that Jake had brought up is also covered in that. So those would be the two things to probably add to the motion.
Yeah,
That's-
those would be the only two things, yes.
That's where I was going. I thought Jake did a nice job for us, and I was just, again, I think we need to get, since these are formal documents and we end up approving it based on the conclusions of law stated in the staff report, we need to make the staff report pretty tight and have it say what we mean it to say rather than what we kind of figure everybody knows we mean it to say. And so that would mean we would acknowledge in the document that is being proposed we approve that it does not meet subdivision regulations, and therefore the following, and let's enumerate those variances that we are approving. All right, so that I'm happy with that answer from Jake. Now on the inches of height, again, I don't feel like I have a dog in this fight, and I certainly want to approve this subdivision, but where did that come from? I'm a little reluctant to be saying, oh, well, our regulations say 12, but Jake thinks 10's fine, so let's just ignore that, or tell me about where that even came from and where is it appropriate and where is it not, and why is it that we're granting a variance to it rather than accepting someone's suggestion that we eliminate it from our regulations. It's on the books. Why is it there, and why aren't we enforcing it? Is that something you can
You
tell
want
us,
me to take
Dave?
that, David?
What's that? I don't know where it came from. Is this in
Or,
our road design? Is this in our road
This is
design?
James Johnson.
Go ahead, James.
Mr. Chairman, John's got a question or comment here.
Just a quick question.
Let's hold on one second. Let's give Mr. James Johnson, a second to, explain. And then after that, we're going to go back to Mr. Spiegelberg's question because we're still in the line of questioning with Mr. Hinckley. So Mr. Spiegelberg, we're just going to wait on you a little bit. Let's get an explanation from Mr. Johnson on this, and then we'll get back in order here. So Mr. Johnson, could you please explain to us why the variance for the depth of the gravel on the county road not being at 12 inches, which is what our regulations require, and why you guys are asking for 8 inches instead?
There's no argument about raising the road for helping it to clear from drifting. The difference in for a road section that's 8 inches high versus one that's 12 inches high is significant. It's more than double because of the ground we're working with.
Mr. Johnson, can you hear
How we
me?
have to build up roads to get with
Mr. Johnson, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
This is Chairman Moore, and I apologize. And
Yes, I can. Can you?
Yes, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I don't know if anybody else was hearing that because it was cutting in and out on me. And so I would ask if you could just start over from the beginning because you were cutting out and we couldn't hear you. So I apologize for that, but if you could start over, please. Thank you. Can anybody hear Mr. Johnson? No. Mr. Johnson, if you can hear us, we can't hear you. I guess here he must be having some internet problems. So, Mr. Schneider, if you could maybe expand on that or your thoughts on that being our engineer and reviewing this for us, could you give us some thoughts, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I assume y'all can hear me. My interpretation of the request for lowering it to 8 inches, and I think is it's where James was trying to speak to it. If we lower it by 4 inches and provide an 8-inch high road section, it reduces the amount of fill that is required to build the road. And there's no great material out there to make a big borrow pit from to bring it. So I think that, and I shouldn't speak for him, but I'm going to, because he has really bad audio. So maybe James, if I misrepresent you, please shoot me an email or chime in. But I think what his explanation is that additional fill will have to be imported in from an off-site location, which is going to increase the cost, increase the work, and just generally not be favorable to the project. Now, Mr. Hinckley, I agree with you that our subdivision regulations say it shall be 12 inches thick. And I think that's appropriate. And I kind of and I talked to Joe and David several times on kind of what's our sideboards on providing a variance, and when do we do it and when do we not do it? When is it appropriate and when is it not appropriate? And I tend to lean on this side that it's probably more appropriate that we provide a variance here in this instance, which that's completely up to you as being the Planning and Zoning Commission to make that final recommendation or that final determination. But I think that what James was trying to say is just that there's not enough material on site to be able to build that road up to 12 inches without a lot of import. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. Mr. Hinckley, continue.
Yeah, maybe David could give us some history on that. I'm not, well, ever since I've been on the commission, we've been hearing a strong pitch for we need to document our reasons. We need to comply with the words as written. So if somebody asks, why are you giving a variance to this particular part of the regulations, and we read the reasons for giving variances, it's undue hardship, and financial hardship doesn't count is explicit in our regulations. So that's what's troubling me here, is that we not be on the fly saying, oh, well, that's going to cost them more. That itself is explicitly not a reason. So I don't know, do we have a precedent here, David? Is this routine? I mean, what can we fall back on? What would your answer be if somebody were to challenge you on why did you give these guys a variance? Where do you find authority in statute to give them a variance?
Well, we're not giving them a variance. That's up to you guys. So
if you've recommended it, so follow up on your recommendation. Or is that not the case?
We went by, obviously the engineer reviewed it and he thought that it wouldn't be, well, he didn't even say, he didn't say if it would or wouldn't be a health safety issue, but if the whole reason for that standard is for snow, and it's not going to make a difference whether it's 8 inches or 4 inches, then I don't know what the purpose of the standard is, and that's where we need these technical guys to kind of tell us. And, and it really is up to you guys on whether you want to do it or not. And yeah, I can't give you a whole lot of, like, our variance standards are fairly new, so we have not used them much, but I agree that it does point out that cost is not a factor, and that's not something that we can do it. So if we're not finding that there's any other reason to lessen it, then yeah, then I guess we would probably say that you need to do it what the regs say. So.
And does Mr. Hammond's earlier testimony bear on this? I wasn't quite clear. Will they have a road clearing agreement? I mean, again, I'm looking for a reason to grant the variance. And can I find something in the fact that they will have a road maintenance? Somebody will be out there plowing the thing on a regular basis?
That's I don't know the exact details of that road agreement, but I think in the past I've seen people out there plowing snow on other roads that's in that improvement district or the maintenance agreement. And this is what the landowners pay on a per yearly basis of fixing any of the roads, and plowing I would assume to be part of that. And then of course, as time goes on, the landowner would be the one until such time, all the lots are started to be sold or completed. They might have to plow individual sections as opposed to, what's ever been built, the houses have been built, it would be in the agreement, and anything else, if they wanted to get to those sites for any reason, they would probably have to plow that themselves. I don't know if that answers your question, Commissioner Hinckley, but it's kind of one of those things that, as you know, been out driving around, I think sometimes there's a snow drift or two and people can just get through that with either a vehicle or it's plowed out with somebody with a pickup truck with a mounted blade or something too, so.
I'm assuming the reason that that's in our standards is we want to approve subdivisions that have adequate access. We've kicked that around pretty thoroughly in the last few months as well, and adequate access includes road maintenance agreements and getting the drifts knocked down. All right, I guess I have no more questions, Mr. Chair. I'd be interested in what my fellow commissioners thought of the reasons for granting that variance. Otherwise, I'm finished with my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hinckley. And before we move on, I know Ms. Hanning, have you joined our meeting?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have, and I apologize for being delayed and the interruption that sometimes causes. Thank you.
No, you're just fine. I just wanted everybody to acknowledge and know I saw your name pop up on the participants, so we just want to welcome you. And I don't know where exactly you got in, but we're in we did amend the agenda, and we took off the Ladybird subdivision. So the only public application we have here is that Craig Jinsa second edition, which we're in right now, and we're in comments or questions from the commission to David or Joe. So I will get to you here in a second if you have any questions. And I don't know how much you heard of the description Joe gave, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask. At this point, we'll go to Mr. Spiegelberg. He had a question for the planning office. Mr. Spiegelberg.
Yes, before this thing gets any more confusing to me, I think the issue is road safety. And I hope and I understand that the minimum width for all roads within the subdivision will be 24 feet. Is that correct?
"24 feet.
24 feet. My next comment is, I think it's anybody that has lived out in the county like I have and other county residents, 4 inches of road fill, whether you're building 12 inches or 8 inches, one road grading will just about eliminate 4 inches of material. So that varies with the snow conditions and the wind and everything. I think it's really irrelevant. It might be a requirement, but in a practical matter, I've seen this for years before Sherman Hills got somewhat paved out here. One road grading will knock 4 inches of material right down into the borrow pit. So I think that's just futile trying to pound on that requirement. But my main concern is 2 vehicles to pass safely when meeting one another, and 24 foot throughout the entire subdivision is agreeable with me. But I think just pounding and pounding and pounding on some of these things like 8 inches versus 12 inches, in time it really means nothing. In time it really means nothing, because eventually these roads will have to be on down the line. These roads may be somewhat improved, or they may be paved, and one road grading will wipe out 4 inches of material. And I can vouch for that because I've seen this all over the county. That's my final comment.
Thank you, Mr. Spiegelberg. Ms. Hanning, I don't know how much of Joe's presentation you heard, but what our topic is right now is there's a few variances that are being asked for by the applicant, and we're kind of discussing which ones are appropriate. Mr. Hinckley asked a question of why, prove to me why should we, and so that's kind of where we're at. So if you, and I don't know if you had a chance to read through the packet and see all that at your hope so, but if you have any questions for the planning office, please feel free to ask them.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess before I ask any questions, I'm sorry if this will be repetitive, because there are a series of variances listed here. Is the only one in contention right now in terms of following the recommendations of Jake Schneider? Is the only one in contention the thickness of the road, or are the others also not resolved?
So the thickness of the road was asked for, and then the width of the road, but as Jake has mentioned, he's received new plans that show that the width of the road is going to be 24 feet. So that's taken care of, even though it's not reflected in the staff report. And then there was one other issue with storm drainage. And a storm drainage easement needs to be added to the plats just to notify, future purchasers where there may be inundation of water. And so that's the other one, but Jake is not recommending that either. So we would include that as something that need to be changed on going forward. So those are the three things, I believe. I hope I didn't miss anything. So.
Well, was there resolution about the 50-foot minimum center line radius on 90-degree intersections?
Jake, do you want to address that?
Yeah, Member Hanning, that was one of the things that was updated in the plan set that James gave me. So that has been addressed in the plan set. And as David said on the previous one, that is not reflected in the packet that was provided to you because he gave it to me last night. So we didn't have time to update that packet. It has been addressed.
Okay, thank you. I guess the only question then that I guess I can narrow in on with the road thickness is there any, I agree with Member Spiegelberg. I live in a homeowner association where we pay yearly dues for road maintenance, and it's always disappointing how quickly that gravel ends up on the side slopes and not on the road. So I agree that it quickly goes into parts of the environment that aren't meant to have the gravel. Is there a difference in the road long-term, the longevity of the road and how frequently it would need to be maintained? Is there any cost burden being shifted on future property owners by shaving off 4 inches on this road? It's a topic our neighborhood argues about regularly at our annual meetings when we talk about upgrading our road, because we have some folks who work for the highway department and they're sort of adamant that if you're going to do it, you got to do it right, or it's just going to wash away anyway. So I wondered where you stood on sort of that it's a hot topic around here, potholes and roads and whatnot. So it seems like it matters to people. So if you can just weigh in on longevity, that would help me. Thanks.
Yeah, I suppose that question was directed to me. I would say that the overall height above the existing ground, whether it be 8 inches or 12 inches, is not critical for long-term longevity. It's because they're providing 4 inches of base thickness, which is our county standard, whether it's a foot high or 8 inches high. It's so it's really not going to changed the manner in which the road functions as a structural surface. And as you and I think member Spiegelberg said it, one grader comes through and they push it all to the side, and then it gets mixed in with dirt, and then the structural integrity of that gravel is reduced because it has more fines in it than what was originally intended to do. So it's a tough discussion because we have standards, and then we can argue and we can make the reasoning fit that our standards don't make any sense, and we just can, we don't even need a gravel surface because after the grader comes through, the gravel just gets wiped away. But we have to, I think we have to start from a certain standard, maintain as much of that standard as what makes sense, and that'll help the road last longer. And then if the gravel gets washed away to a degree that it becomes muddy, more gravel can always be brought in, and it can be rebuilt again. But I don't know if I answered your question or not. But that's my comment, I suppose.
Yeah, no, thank you. It did answer the question. It sounds like what is most important to not compromise on is the 4 inches of road base. And that although the applicant may have requested a variance based on some project cost considerations, we can evaluate our standard based on the safety aspects of it. I mean, we can grant the variance for other reasons than financial project cost reasons, in that somebody's making a request and we don't see safety or transfer of road damage responsibility onto future landowners issue. It sounds like what you're saying is, as long as you got that 4-inch base with some gravel on top, you're meeting a minimum safety requirement and road longevity requirement, and you can just keep adding gravel as you need. So thanks for the answer. I appreciate it. And Mr. Chair, that takes care of my questions. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, David.
Commissioner Hanning, I would also add, and I think you missed this, Mr. Hammond also mentioned that this road, or these roads, will be in the, what is it called, Pope Springs Road Improvement District. And so once they're built, there is an improvement mechanism and they will be improved by that district. So the lot owner right now is paying into it. Each additional lot owner will then pay into it. So there will be future maintenance on these roads.
Thanks, Mr. Gertz. The landowners, when they buy, they already know what the front end deal is to the commitment to the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gertz. At this point, I don't have any questions for staff. So at this point, would the applicant or the applicant's representative like to address the commission?
I think pretty much all the questions have been answered. I hope they've been answered for you. This is a process that's been going on for a while. We've been trying to get everything taken care of. And we also have a geologist that'll be coming on board for the Chapter 23 DEQ process. And so that'll be coming up in the future. So everything is pretty well in place right now. All the percolation tests and everything have been done, and they've been given to him for his process of his work. So I don't think there's anything else that I can add at this time, unless you have any other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond. I am going to go around and ask the commission if they have any questions for you, if that's okay.
Sure.
Mr. Kennedy, do you have any questions for Mr. Hammond?
I do not.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Hinckley, do you have any questions for Mr. Hammond? Mr. Hinckley, do you have any questions for Mr. Hammond?
My microphones don't seem to get along very well. No, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm okay.
All right, thank you. Mr. Spiegelberg, do you have any questions for Mr. Hammond?
None, thank you.
Ms. Hanning, do you have any questions for Mr. Hammond?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. At this point, I don't have any for Mr. Hammond as well. And so at this point, we'll go ahead and open up this application to the public. If there's any members of the public that wish to speak for or against this public application, now is your time to voice your opinion. I do ask that anybody who does address the commission, please raise your hand on the participants list, and I'll call on you, and then please state your name and your address. I'm not seeing anybody other than the people that are the members and the applicant, but I'll give a second here just to have that open. So we'll give a second here for anybody in the public that wants to speak. All right, not seeing anybody. Nobody new came on there. I guess we'll go ahead and close this to the public. Commission discussion on this application. I'll go around if there's any discussion that anybody wants to bring up. Mr. Kennedy.
None for me. I'll reserve my time for a moment, though, if need be.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Hinckley.
I'm okay at this point.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hinckley. Mr. Spiegelberg.
None,
Okay, thank you, Mr. Spiegelberg. Ms. Hanning.
I have no comment, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, very good. And I don't think I really have any additional comments or questions at this point. I think it'll be really interesting when we see the final plat. This kind of gives us an idea, but at this point, I guess I'll go ahead and be more public comment, and we've kind of discussed our questions and thoughts on this. What I'm looking for is motion options from members of the commission, which would be either a recommendation of approval, and with that approval, there needs to be an addition of the items that Mr. Gertsch and Mr. Williams had put in the report, which would be the storm drainage easement that needs to accompany the preliminary plat. And then David, help me out with this, because you said that I'm just saying, I guess before I go forward with that, let's just have a clear understanding of this. And I think this is what Mr. Hinckley was getting at. Mr. Gertsch, before we go any further, I want to clarify this with you. The first variance, the applicant is requesting a variance from the Albany County Subdivision Regulations on drainage ditch slope, which requires a 0.5% slope. The applicant proposes a 4% slope. Do we need to include that into the motion?
Jake, are you still there?
Yes, I am still here.
Okay, with the new plans, did the drainage ditch slope change, or do they still need a variance?
They would still need a variance, and it would be 0.4%.
Okay.
Okay, so we would need that one. The next bulletin point, the applicant is requesting a variance from Albany County Subdivision Regulations on street standards. That one, my understanding of it is that one has been clarified, and that one has been taken care of, and we do not need to worry about that one. Is that correct?
Correct. No variance needed for that one.
Okay. The third bulletin point is requesting a variance from the Albany County Subdivision Regulations on street standards. Our regulations call for a 50-foot minimum centerline radius on 90-degree intersections. The applicant proposes a 20-foot radius curve on the inside of a 90-degree intersection. And Mr. Snyder, County Engineer, advises that we grant that. is that one been taken care of, or do we need to include that into the motion?
That one has also been taken care of on the updated plans that Mr. Johnson gave me last night. So it no longer needs to be addressed.
Okay, thank you. So the third bulletin point does not need to be included. The fourth bulletin point is the applicant is requesting a variance from the Albany County Subdivision Regulations on street standards. Our regulations call for vertical curves to be used at changes of grades exceeding 1% and shall be designed to provide at minimum a sight distance of 200 feet. A variance is requested due to mentioning that the first time a grader is run down the road, the vertical curve will be lost. So that matter, is that one been addressed, or do we need to have that included into our motion?
Yes, sir. That one will still need to be included in the motion. And if I don't know that we discussed that much, and I don't know that we need to, but the subdivision regulations aren't exactly explicit in the curve nomenclature. So these are Sag curves versus Crest curves. And the Crest curve is where we need the sight distance. The Sag curve, you know, if you go down, it's a right issue. So it's still, in my opinion, it is called out in the regulations, and we need to have a variance approved for that because they are not meeting the standard.
Okay. And do you think that as far as safety of traveling on that road, that approving that variance is sufficient for safe travel on the road?
Yes, I do, Chair, because that is, like I said, that's a Sag curve. So if somebody is coming down, it's a ride issue quality versus a sight distance issue.
Okay. So two vehicles approaching each other would see each other, and there wouldn't be any blind spots.
That is correct.
Okay, very good. So that one would need to be included into the motion. The next bulletin point down, which would be 5, the applicant is requesting a variance from the Albany County Subdivision Regulations on street standards. Our regulations call for a maximum slope of 5 over 1 for 5 over 1 for ditches. The variance has been requested to have a greater slope on the back slope of the ditch due to the current conditions of the property. So would that one need to be included in the motion, Mr.? Has that one been remedied, or does that need to be approved for a variance?
That one would still need to be approved for a variance.
Okay, could you please explain that one just a little bit, just for my own edification on this?
Yes. So the roadway, if you look at the cross section, you have the center line, then you go out to the lane, then you have the shoulder, and then you have a slope down to the bar ditch, and that one's a 4-to-1. It's just the back slope that goes like from the bottom of the bar ditch out to existing grade, which we would call the daylight line. In some areas, the road is kind of on a side hill, and so in areas, it's going to extend beyond the property line if we don't grant this variance to be a little bit steeper than 5-to-1. And you know, it's a low speed, low volume roadway, and so if somebody wants to run off into the bar ditch and hit that other slope, it's not going to be that traumatic on them because they won't be going that fast. They'll be able to recover, in my opinion, unless they're driving incredibly recklessly. So,
okay, thank you. So with that one being approved, safety is still pretty fair assessment that safety is okay on that.
that would be a correct assessment.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And that one would also need to be included into the motion, correct?
Yes, that is correct. That is a variance that would be granted if the commission chose to do so.
Okay, very good. And then on bulletin number 6, that the applicant is requesting a variance from the Albany County Subdivision Regulations on street standards. Our regulations require a road to be built at least 1 foot above existing grade. A variance is being requested to lower the required height of the road to 8 inches above the existing grade. And this is what we went through quite a bit earlier that you explained. So it's 4 inches less than what our regulations require. Part of the reasoning behind that is because of some of the terrain out there, the swells in the ground. To build the road effectively to 1 foot, a lot of fill dirt would have to be brought in off-site, increasing the cost of the road. But in your opinion, as the county engineer, Is the road at 8 inches, it was 1 foot, is it still going to be a safe road to travel for vehicles that, for individuals who buy properties out there, their guests that are visiting? Is it going to be sufficient for fire trucks to get out there? Is it going to be sufficient for the sheriff's office, in your opinion, as the county engineer?
Yes, sir, it would be. And I think we don't want to lower it too much. If we get to a point where it's too low, then we have drainage issues because it becomes too close to the elevation of the bar ditch. And then that's not a snow related issue or a drifting issue. It is a hydrology issue, which our roadway will wash out. But lowering it 8 inches does not create that scenario.
Lowering it 4 inches doesn't?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you very much. And that too would also have to be included into the motion. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, very good.
Same way I
Okay.
do at my house.
Okay, Commission. So, Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Hinks, and Mr. Smith, do we, and I guess I'll go back through everybody again here just to make sure we have a clear understanding. Mr. Kennedy, do you have a correct understanding of what is being asked in a motion if it is approved?
I do not, and if you would wish, I would move at this time.
Well, let's well, I don't know if
We can go ahead and do the motion and then get into discussion on points. And if there's a difference of opinion on those 4 variances, why we can deal with that via an amendment.
Okay.
That's all right.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kennedy. So we have a motion on the table to approve with the following amendments, with the variances and the addition of the storm drainage easement to be added to the plat. And before we go, if we get a second, we're going to have further discussion. Do we have a second on this?
I would so second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Spiegelberg. So we have a motion on the table to approve this application based on the, with the addition of the variances and the storm drain easement to be added to the plat. I'm going to continue through. Mr. Kennedy, do you have anything to add?
I don't. I actually live on, I don't have an HOA where I live. And about every 5 years, I need to add about another 3 or 4 inches of road base on to keep that lane up. And that's life if you're on a gravel road. So I don't have any issue with granting that variance on lowering that to 8 inches.
Okay.
It's an ongoing cost anyway.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Hinckley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm prepared to vote in favor of the motion and thank you, Mr. Chair, David and Jake, for a robust discussion. I think it's important that we carefully review our regulations as we have these applications come forward. And so thank you for your patience and diligence. I think we have a motion that we can get behind. So
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hinckley. Mr. Spiegelberg.
No comment.
All right, thank you, Mr. Spiegelberg. Ms. Hanning?
Yeah, I guess I just want to recap to make sure I'm understanding that we would be approving with the variances laid out in the staff report that corresponded to bullets 1, 4, 5, and 6. But and the bullets weren't numbered, so I'm assigning my own numbering sequentially. And that bullets 2 and 3 have been addressed in the revised application that Mr. Schneider received last night. But that we are additionally adding a variance to require a storm drain easement. Do I have what I think I'm voting on in a favorable manner? Am I recapping that accurately?
Correct. You are correct.
Okay, then I'm on board.
All right, very good. And I don't have any questions at this time either. So we have a motion to approve And Mr. Gertz, before we call a vote on this, do you want us to read out the motion with all of that in it? Or would it be sufficient enough to say we have a motion to approve with, as Ms. Hanning put it, number 1 bulletin, number 4 bulletin, 5 bulletin, 6 bulletin, and the storm drainage easement to be applied to the preliminary plat? Is that going to be sufficient for you?
That's perfect.
Okay, very good. I'll go ahead and call roll here. Mr. Kennedy, your vote.
Aye.
Mr. Hinckley, your vote. Mr. Hinckley?
Aye.
Oh,
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Mr. Spiegelberg?
Aye.
Thank you. Ms. Hanning?
Aye.
And Chairman Moore, myself, aye. Motion carries. That'll be sent on to the Board of County Commissioners. We'll move on in our agenda, if I'm lucky enough to find it. All right, that concludes publications. Current planning projects, Mr. Gertz.
No current planning projects to talk about tonight.
Okay, anything coming down the pipe or anything that we need to be kind of thinking about?
Yeah, so I did I should shoot you guys an email or something. We're doing our natural resource management plan. I think we talked about that a while back. It's been a while, I think. But anyways, it's moving forward. We're in the process of beginning the development of this plan. We're going to have actually a public meeting next Tuesday night at 7:30 at the library. So their big room there will have the public hearing or public meeting. It's just a scoping meeting. I'll do a brief presentation and then collect any input at that time. So I just want to invite you guys to come to that.
When is that, David?
What's that?
When is that?
It's at 7:30 at the library on Tuesday, whatever day it is, 17th or something, 18th,
17th, yeah.
17th.
At the public library, correct?
Public library, yep. You won't be able to check out any books there because the rest of it's closed, but you can come to the meeting, so.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, David. Mr. Hinckley, go ahead.
Yeah, just things that are floating around out there while we have current planning projects. As you know, one that I've kind of been tracking, David, is that Mckinney subdivision. I wonder if you could bring us up to speed on where they are and that whole road issue. And I know Rocky Ridge was involved with that. So it's something that's kind of come back and forth on our plate. What's going on with the roads out there? Can you bring us up to date?
Okay, so, I mean, road-wise, there's still a discussion of whether there's legal access off of Quarter Horse Drive. And so I believe the county attorney's office has taken the position that there is legal access off of there. And if that's not correct, obviously jump in, Jennifer. But however, there is a road access permit at the city level that they would like to get, and the applicant for the Stone Ridge application has contacted the city, and I guess they have not determined how to get that permit or what it is. I'm not sure exactly what's going on there. That would be an explanation that probably have to be given by the applicant. What I can tell you is that I did receive notification from the applicant and they would like this project to move forward. So it will be scheduled for your next meeting. So that will be going forward. And I think maybe that's what you're looking for. Whether they, there's going to be obviously discussions about the access issue. Obviously it's in the aquifer protection area. So So there'll be those discussions that will be had at the time. But yeah, you'll see it soon, so.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Also, I wanted to tell you that our zoning maps online, I don't know if anybody cares, but I do. We have an interactive zoning map. Our addressing coordinator helped put that together, and we've got it online now. So I'm just really excited about it because it's been like 5 years in the making. I've tried to work with past GIS offices and it just never got taken care of. But luckily, Jory, our addressing coordinator, has some skills in that area, and we've got it online. So if you guys want to check it out, you can make the colors pop up and go away and all that stuff. So pretty excited about that. So
Good job.
Well, thank you, David. Appreciate that. Moving on to other items and announcements. Our next meeting is going to be Wednesday, September 8th, 2021 at 2 p.m. And I think at this point, as much as it'd be good to get together, I still think it's very important for all of us to be safe. So I'd prefer if we did it on Zoom again. And that'll be September 8, 2021 at 2 p.m. Any comments from the commission on that? Mr. Hinckley, I see good. Ms. Hanning?
I'm just worried now that we're going back to the 2 o'clock time. It probably means someone's scheduling a blizzard for us that day.
You're right. That's right. Mr. Kennedy?
I'm quite all right, thanks.
Okay, Mr. Spiegelberg?
I'm fine.
Okay, thank you. With that being said, there is citizen comment. I don't see anybody online that's a participant in our meeting that isn't somebody who's involved, unless somebody else has something to comment on. Not seeing any. We'll move to adjournment. The chair, there being no further business to conduct, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved. Kennedy.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Spiegelberg. I'll go ahead and call roll on that. Before I do, thanks for a good meeting, everybody. Good discussion, and stay safe, and we'll talk to everybody. We'll see everybody next month. Mr. Kennedy?
Aye.
Mr. Hinckley?
Aye. I'm trying to say yes. Just can't get it.
Thank you. Ms. Hanning?
Aye.
Mr. Spiegelberg?
Aye.
And Chairman Moore, myself, aye. Motion carried. Meeting's adjourned at 5:20 p.m. Everybody take care and have a good rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.